reality
therapist perception.
Bachelorette. Get into it?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Okay. Reactivity TV.
Reactivity TV time. And just for those who are unfamiliar, Reactivity TV is our therapist perception of what we see on reality TV. Specifically, right now, we're talking about Bachelor in Paradise, which just kicked off.
Mm-hmm. Yes, brand new season, Bachelor in Paradise. My personal favorite, I think, part of the franchise, because I'm laughing at myself as I'm about to say this. My favorite part because I feel like it is a most accurate representation of modern dating, particularly with like dating apps and things like that. And it's also really fun to watch because there are so many different personalities and drama.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a little more real because you're putting a bunch of people together who could possibly find love with different people as opposed to, oh, I'm here to meet one person. Yeah, you're right. I mean, this could happen on vacation, right?
You never know.
You never know.
Yes, and so the format of Bachelor in Paradise is somewhat similar to The Bachelor and Bachelorette in that there are roses each week, but each person of a particular gender each week gets a rose to give to the person of their choice, and then that switches, the roles reverse each week, which is always an interesting dynamic to see how that plays out and affects the kind of like dating and navigating that. And supposedly, it ends with the concept of an engagement at the end. And so as Jesse Palmer, the host, put it, you either find love or you leave. So no pressure.
Not at all.
So there was so much going on in last night's episode, not only because Bachelor in Paradise also just has a lot more players, but there's just like so much more. So what stuck out to you? What was your moment?
So as you're saying, a lot's going on. Everyone's meeting everybody. Sometimes for the first time, sometimes they're all in their Bachelor Nation, groups and whatnot. But for the most part, everyone's just getting familiar with each other. Some more so than others, right off the bat. But so my moment was a meeting that didn't really go as somebody thought. Mm-hmm. It was between Genevieve and Justin, and just forgive me because whenever these new seasons kick off, I don't know anyone's name until like a third of the way through at least, maybe more. Some of these people have been on other seasons, so it was a little easier to catch on unless they left early. Besides the point, Genevieve and Justin, they met, but right before Genevieve was talking about how she was really looking forward to meeting him. And she'd really thought up a whole kind of scenario of what he's like and all this kind of hypotheticals of what their relationship could be. And then they meet and they're talking and it's pretty dull and not going anywhere. And she definitely seemed pretty disappointed in that. Mm-hmm. So the reason I brought that up is because sometimes this happens when people are dating, certainly on dating apps. People are dating and they're thinking about what something could turn into. They're thinking really far down the line based on a few criteria that they know about somebody in a profile. And that doesn't give somebody the full picture. So maybe, I have no idea, absolutely no idea, but maybe Genevieve knew about Justin from Katie's season that he was on, or maybe social media, or something that she was able to then craft this idea of, ooh, Justin and I would be a good fit.
A fantasy.
Yes, a fantasy, exactly. Mm-hmm. So the reason I thought I wanted to bring that today was just because a lot of the times these hypotheticals, these fantasies don't play out in the way that we think that they will. And I don't know where their relationship is headed by any means, but I just thought it was an interesting thing to see play out on the screen, where it happened with Serene and Brad too, but
Brandon,
dang it.
You were close.
I was close. I told you. Serene and Brandon.
It happens. Yeah. And it looked really different.
Yes, and it looked very different. They were, whoop, ready to go.
They went for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you're so right. Like, yeah, Genevieve did apparently concoct this like fantasy about the relationship that she and Justin could have based maybe on what we all saw on Katie's season, and maybe what she's seen on social media or heard about him. And yeah, it did seem like it kind of fell flat when they were meeting, and they didn't really actually have a lot to connect on. And at the same time, despite that really kind of awkward conversation we witnessed, she was still in it. She was still invested and went back later. And I wonder how much of that was because she had this fantasy and she was already invested before she even met him, and how much, we only know what we see on screen. So we don't know what happened between them, between the narwhal conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and this even makes me think further about it, that when she went back to talk to him and they're laying together in that little cabana, that she said, you didn't seem into me before. And it wasn't that I didn't seem into you, or that you weren't who I thought you'd be. It was, you didn't seem into me, which I was thinking about maybe how she could have interpreted it that way, that, oh, this isn't working because he's not into me, not this isn't working because this isn't a good match, and we're not actually, you aren't who I thought you were. I think she might still be stuck in that framework of, oh, I want you to be this person, but you're not returning that.
Yeah. Oh, God, that's such a good point. And I think that's something that comes up in dating a lot, is that we sometimes get so wrapped up in whether or not someone likes us that we forget to think about if how the person is showing up is like actually attractive and appealing to us. Because it sounds like there were a lot of disconnects where they had this kind of conversation that fell flat, and then she felt like he didn't show an interest in her, and that he wasn't like showing her with actions that he was invested, and all of those like check, like not a match, or like turned off. Yeah. But she didn't really give herself the agency to do that. She was more putting like the power, so to speak, about what their future would be in his hands, which happens so much in dating.
Yeah.
One thing I also just wanted, just in terms of like the like projecting fantasies, the other thing I noticed as well was Andrew S. meeting Teddy, and how he seemed so excited to meet her.
So excited.
And it seemed like he had also kind of like fantasized about what she and that would be like, to the point that he was like
so nervous
and couldn't even be himself because he was so nervous. And I found that really endearing, but also, again, like kind of so relatable, that we can create these kind of like stories and visions in our head. Ooh, that kind of connects back to what we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
But we can create these stories in our head that like end up paralyzing us or keep us from being our most authentic self, because we built up this fantasy. And that seemed to also happen with Andrew.
Yeah.
They got through it, though.
They did. I'm rooting for them.
Me too.
Your moment.
My moment. Mine is a mix of a moment / a person. So I really wanted to talk about Lace. And I have to say, I give Lace a lot of credit for coming back. She was on Bachelor in Paradise season 3. She definitely had a little bit of a messier experience in the Bachelor franchise. She did leave Bachelor in Paradise 3 engaged, if you so recall.
Remember that.
Just me, okay.
I would have been calling her loose, like
Logan.
Yeah.
But she she came in, she's 32. She's like kind of removed from current Bachelor world, even though like in Bachelor history, she's like kind of iconic.
Yeah.
And so she walks in, and she's, again, a little bit older than most of the other women on the show. not that she's old at 32, and kind of a little bit out of the game. And she walks in and she's like, hey, and no one turns around. And oh my gosh, my heart broke for her. And you could kind of watch her. And I guess why this kind of resonated with me is that you could kind of watch her kind of get more stressed and more anxious about like, oh my gosh, I don't fit in here. And I think that that experience that she had is also really relatable, like how brave it is to put yourself out there and to be kind of met with not as warm of a welcome as you were hoping. And that it seemed like she had come in with some insecurities and her insecurities were validated. And so I like wanted to highlight that because that does happen sometimes, that like sometimes our like what we're worried about does quote unquote come true. And so I just kind of noticed Lace, I was almost going to call her Luz, Lace start to spiral a little bit. And I think that kind of like spiral is what contributed toward her feeling like no one was giving her attention, no one really was interested in her. But the other part of Lace that I wanted to talk about was how incredibly impressed I was with her ability to be adaptive, to gain attention from the group.
She did it.
She faked a birthday. I mean, how creative. But again, I think it's like kind of a sillier or lighter example of sometimes we do things that that are adaptive, that do help us get our needs met. And she was feeling so insecure and so unwanted and so unappealing to the rest of the group that she was able to figure out a way to garner attention and affection and get a guy to talk to her.
Yeah, she looked like she was about to go home. And then she was like, I'm going to turn this around for myself. I don't want to go out like this. I want to try here. Yeah.
So that really resonated with me in kind of just watching like the spiral of her anxiety and maybe insecurity and then watching what she did with that. And I think that's, especially as we get into our main topic today about anxiety, really helpful to kind of think about that sometimes depending on the like thoughts and feelings that we have, we might engage in certain behaviors or activities that help us get our need met. And whether that's her going to cry in her bunk bed by herself and completely isolate because she was feeling so uncomfortable, and then on the flip side, go and put herself out there. I mean, we all find ways to cope with really uncomfortable feelings, and we saw Lace do that. So I just wanted to kind of note that was such a human thing that she did and so incredibly adaptive of her.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And then she seemed to see that play out with Logan too when she was talking to him. It almost was this, and maybe it was confirmation bias where she was already feeling insecure and then he forgot her name, and it seemed like she just slipped right back into, oh man, maybe I shouldn't be here, or like maybe I'm like quote unquote too old to be here. I don't know these people and this is weird, this is awkward. Like it just seemed to kind of flip her right back into that. So I'm curious to see what then plays out after that. If she turns it around again, or it, has this anxiety but is able to manage it and feel like even with this anxiety she can still get the most out of her time there.
Right. Yeah, she came in saying, it's been 6 years, I've done a lot of self-work, and this will really put that work to the test. And so this is not a therapist. Not a therapist reaction. My human reaction is I'm rooting for her. I really am.
Yeah.
So that was my moment, so to speak.
Great.
Okay. More to come. Full season with 2 episodes a week.
Ooh. Yeah, they're really going to speed through that one. Woo. We're in.
We're ready.